Hi, once again welcome back to Obstetrics and Gynecology videos. In this video, we are going to see about an abnormality that can occur during the pregnancy, that is gestational diabetes. First, let us see what is diabetes mellitus. Diabetes is a chronic and progressive disorder, and the term diabetes mellitus describes a metabolic disorder that affects the normal metabolism of carbohydrate, fat, and protein. It is characterized by hyperglycemia and glycosuria resulting from the defects of insulin secretion or insulin action or both. So the person will be having hyperglycemia, that is increased blood glucose level will be there, and glycosuria, that is the person will be excreting glucose through the urine. Diabetes is the most common medical complication that can occur during the pregnancy. This diabetes mellitus is classified into type 1, type 2, other types, and gestational diabetes. And the type 1 include immune mediated and idiopathic. So this will produce the absolute deficiency of the insulin. And type 2 is maybe due to the deficiency of insulin or maybe due to the insulin resistance. And the other type include genetic mutations that are producing the deficiency or destruction of beta cell function or changes in the beta cell function, and genetic defects in insulin action, genetic symptoms like Down syndrome, Klinefelter syndrome, Turner syndrome, diseases of the exocrine pancreas, example pancreatitis, cystic fibrosis, and endocrinopathies, that is Cushing syndrome, phenochromoscytoma, and drugs or chemical induced, that is action of glucocorticoids, thiazides, adrenergic and agonist, all those things may produce diabetes mellitus, and certain infections like congenital rubella, cytomegalovirus, and Coxsackie virus also may produce the diabetes mellitus. And the last one is gestational diabetes. That is the thing we are going to discuss today. Diabetes or diagnosis of the diabetes during pregnancy. First, let us see overt diabetes. Women with a random plasma glucose level greater than 200 milligram per deciliter, along with classic signs and symptoms such as polydipsia, polyuria, and unexplained weight loss or a fasting glucose level 125 milligram per deciliter are considered as the overt diabetes by American Diabetes Association. The diagnostic cutoff value for overt diabetes in pregnancy is fasting plasma glucose level is 126 milligram per deciliter or higher. That is, if the fasting glucose level is more than 125, we are calling it as gestational diabetes during pregnancy if it is more than 125. Gestational diabetes is defined as carbohydrate intolerance of variable severity with the onset of first recognition during the pregnancy. The NDT usually presents late in the second or during the third trimester. That is, in a previously normal woman, if the woman is not having the previous history of diabetes mellitus, and all of a sudden during the pregnancy time, if the lady's blood sugar level is increasing or if she is getting the features of diabetes mellitus, we are calling it as gestational diabetes. And the incidence is, it occurs in 7% of all pregnancies, and it is resulting in more than 2 lakhs of cases per year. Depending on the population sample and diagnostic criteria, the prevalence ranges from 1 to 14%. The candidates at risk for gestational diabetes mellitus include those who are having the family history of diabetes mellitus, and those who have the previous children with the birth weight more than 4 kg, and those who demonstrate persistent glucosuria, having unexplained vegetal doses, and those who are having the polyhydramnios or recurrent vaginal candidiasis during the pregnancy, and if the age is above 30, if the mother is having obesity, and it's common in certain ethnic group like East Asian, Pacific Island ancestry. And in these cases, actually you should go for the screening, and the screening include, you can check the plasma glucose level after giving 50 grams of glucose. So after giving this 50 grams of glucose, we have to check the blood glucose level. Usually we are performing this test between 24 to 28th week of pregnancy. And sometimes after this, first we will give 50 gram and we will check the glucose level. So this is known as glucose control test. Sometimes we will follow this by glucose tolerance test. That is, we will give 100 grams of glucose and we will test the tolerance of glucose. And this risk or the screening, to whom or we have to conduct the screening. So the people those who are at low risk, that is the low risk people include members of the ethnic group with low prevalence of GDM, and there is no known history of first degree relatives having the diabetes mellitus, and if the age is below 25 and the weight of the mother is normal and weight of normal previous, if the mother is having a previous birth and if the weight of the baby is normal, and if there is no history of abnormal glucose metabolism and there is no history of poor obstetrical outcome, in these cases we are considering as low risk. This routine glucose test is normally not required for the age group those who are having low risk, and for the group with the average risk we are supposed to perform the routine examination of sugar test or glucose test, and that we should perform between 24 to 28th week of gestation. And usually we are following the two-step procedure. That is, first we will give 50 grams of glucose and we will perform the glucose control test, and after that we can give 100 grams of glucose and you can perform the oral glucose tolerance test. Otherwise you can perform it as a one-step procedure. That is, instead of giving this 50 gram or instead of doing the GCT, you can go for the GTT directly. In the mothers those who are having high risk, that is, these people include the people with the ladies with the severe obesity and those who are having the family history of type 2 diabetes, and the mothers those who are having the previous history of gestational diabetes in the previous deliveries. And if GDM is not diagnosed, and the blood glucose testing should be repeated at 24 to 48 weeks in these cases. That is, in the first test if you are not diagnosing also, again you have to repeat the test between 24 to 48 weeks of gestation. Usually we are performing the test in the morning after an overnight fasting, that is after 8 hours of fasting, and the fasting should not last for more than 14 hours. And for previous 3 days the lady should have normal unrestricted diet and normal physical activity. The subject should remain seated and should not smoke during the test. And the sugar level will be, in the fasting, first you should assess the blood sugar level and it will be 95 milligram per deciliter, and after giving 100 grams of glucose, first hour you have to take it and it will be between 180 milligram per deciliter. Again at second hour if you are testing, it will be 155 milligram per deciliter, and again at third hour if you are testing, it will be 140 milligram per deciliter. And if this level is there, means it shows that it is normal. Now let us see the effects of pregnancy on diabetes. During the pregnancy, actually it is very difficult to stabilize the blood glucose level. It is due to the insulin antagonism, that is, insulin resistance will be there during the pregnancy, and the effect of human placental lactogen, estrogen, progesterone, free cortisol, and degeneration of insulin by the placenta. All these things are the contributing factors that leads to the resistance of insulin, or that leads to the intolerance to insulin. And the insulin requirements during the pregnancy also will increase, and if the pancreas is not producing sufficient amount, that won't be sufficient for meeting the insulin requirements. As more glucose leak out through the urine during the renal glycosuria, control of insulin does or cannot be made by urine test, and repeat blood sugar estimation should be done. Usually the urine excretion will be having mild or slight amount of glucose. So by performing the urine sugar test itself, you cannot confirm, or you cannot predict the, or you cannot tell about the amount of glucose in the blood. You have to perform the blood sugar test itself. And ketoacidosis can be precipitated during the hyperemesis and in the case of early pregnancy, and if infection is there, and during the fasting also there is a chance for ketoacidosis. And it can be iatrogenically increased by beta sympathomimetic and corticosteroids used in the management of preterm labor. And insulin requirements falls significantly in the puerperium, that is, immediately after the delivery the insulin requirement will come to the normal level. The vascular changes, especially the retinopathy, neuropathy, coronary artery diseases and neuropathy may get worsened during the pregnancy. And now we can see the maternal and fetal effects due to the diabetes. The maternal effect during pregnancy include if the blood glucose level is very high, that may lead to the abortion. There is a chance for preterm labor, urinary tract infection, increased incidence of preeclampsia, chance for polyhydramnios, maternal distress, chance for getting complications of diabetes like diabetic retinopathy, microaneurysms, hemorrhage and proliferative retinopathy. There is a chance for diabetic nephropathy and ketoacidosis. And during the labor, there is a chance for prolongation of the labor due to big baby, chance for shoulder dystocia, perineal injuries, chance for postpartum hemorrhage due to the prolonged labor, and chance for operated delivery also. That is usually the large baby will be there, those who are in the mothers, those who are having diabetes, and due to the large size baby, whatever complications can occur, that will come during the labor. And during the puerperium, due to the prolonged labor, chance for infection is there, chance for that is puerperal sepsis, and there is a chance for postpartum hemorrhage and lactation failure also. And the fetal effect include fetal macrosomia will be there in the case of 30 to 40% of the babies, and it is due to the maternal hyperglycemia due to the high amount of glucose in the maternal blood. Hypertrophy and hyperplasia of the fetal islets of Langerhans will occur, and it will increase the secretion of fetal insulin, so the fetus will start to convert the carbohydrate and it will start to utilize the carbohydrate and it will be converted and accumulated as fat. This is one reason. And the other one, in the maternal blood, free fatty acids will be there and and the level of free fatty acids will be high in the case of diabetes, and that leads to the increased transfer to the fetus. So more fat will be transferring to the fetus, and that leads to the acceleration of triglyceride synthesis, and this leads to the adiposity. So these two factors will contribute to the fetal macrosomia. And chance for congenital malformation is there, that is 6 to 10% chances is there due to the severity of the diabetes. And the malformations can include in the central nervous system and the skeletal system, there is a chance for neural tube defects, anencephaly, microcephaly and sacral agenesis. And in the cardiovascular system, there is a chance for ventricular septal defect, atrial septal defect, coarctation of aorta, transposition of great vessels and cardiomegaly. And in the kidney, there is a chance for renal agenesis, hydronephrosis, urethral duplication, and in the case of gastrointestinal system, chance for duodenal atresia is there, anorectal atresia is also there, and other complications include there is a chance for umbilical, there is a chance for single umbilical. The fetal complications include there is a chance for birth injuries, especially chance for injury to the brachial plexus due to the large size baby, and chance for growth restriction, but it is very common. Usually the macrosomia will be there, and there is a chance for unexplained death also. And the other neonatal complications after delivery include hypoglycemia, respiratory distress syndrome, hypobilirubinemia, polycythemia, hypocalcemia, hypomagnesemia, and cardiomyopathy. And perinatal mortality rate increases 2 to 3 times due to the hypoglycemia, respiratory distress syndrome, polycythemia, and due to the jaundice. So in the management include the dietary modification. In the case of ladies, those who are having the body mass index more than 30 kilogram per meter square, they may benefit from this dietary modification. So we can give 30 kilocalorie per kilogram per day for these ladies. So along with that, we have to test for the ketonuria, because maternal ketonuria is linked with the impaired psychomotor development of the offspring. And caloric management is based on ideal body weight, and the recommendations are 30 kilocalorie per kilogram for women with body mass index of 20 to 25 or 24 kilocalorie per kilogram for women with body mass index 26 to 29, and 12 to 15 kilocalorie per kilogram for women with BMI above 30. The recommended overall dietary ratio is 33% to 40% complex carbohydrates and 35 to 40% fat, and 20% of protein should be included in the diet. The calorie distribution will help 75 to 80% of the GDM, or they will control 75 to 80% of the gestational diabetes. Next is exercise. We have to encourage the mother to do the regular exercises for minimum of half an hour in a day. And glucose monitoring also should be done. Daily self glucose monitoring, if we are performing, it will decrease the complications and we can reduce the fetal macrosomic incidence also. And glycosylated hemoglobin should be determined at the end of the first trimester and 3 months thereafter. If the dietary modification and exercise, if it fails to control the gestational diabetes, we can go for the insulin therapy. And the insulin therapy is recommended for the ladies, those who are having the plasma blood glucose level more than 95 milligram per deciliter, or the 2-hour postprandial glucose level is more than 120 milligram per deciliter. And the total dose is between 20 to 30 units of insulin per day, and it should be given before breakfast and is commonly used to initiate therapy, which is divided into 2/3 intermediate long-acting insulin and a third short-acting insulin. Alternatively, weight-based split dose insulin is also administered twice daily. That also we can go. During the stabilization process of insulin dose, frequent blood sugar estimation, especially at night, may be necessary. And during the pregnancy, we are not giving oral hypoglycemic drugs. We are giving insulin only to control the diabetes. If there is no complication, we have to admit the case between 34 to 36 weeks. And early hospitalization facilitates stabilization of diabetes, and it minimizes the incidence of preeclampsia, polyhydramnios, and preterm labor, and it will help for the selection of appropriate time and method of delivery. And termination of pregnancy, it should be done at 37 weeks. A majority of intrauterine death occurs in the last 2 weeks of pregnancy. So usually at 37 weeks, we will go for the termination of pregnancy. And early delivery may not be considered when there is a vascular complication, that is when hypertension or evidences of fetal compromise or antenatal monitoring is, if you are suspecting, in that case we are not going for the early delivery. Otherwise, usually we will go for the induction of the labor by 36-37 weeks. And the indications for the induction of the labor include multipara with good obstetrical history, young primigravida mothers without any obstetrical complications, and presence of congenital malformations of the fetus. On the previous day of induction, usual dose of insulin we are supposed to give, and on the day of induction of labor, we are not giving breakfast, and morning dose of insulin also we are not giving for the woman. And we should start normal saline infusion, and induction is done by lower rupture of the membrane. And simultaneously we can give oxytocin also if there is no contraindications. And intravenous drip of 1 liter of 5% dextrose is set up with 10 units of soluble insulin. If the labor is getting prolonged, or if the labor process is getting prolonged, we can start this also. Otherwise, we are not giving. An infusion rate of 100 to 125 ml per hour will maintain normal blood glucose level, and it will control the blood glucose level at 100 milligram per deciliter. And insulin also may be infused from syringe pump. The blood glucose levels are estimated hourly with a glucose meter, and the soluble insulin dose is adjusted accordingly. Epidural analgesia is ideal for the pain relief, and if the labor fails to start within 6 to 8 hours after induction, or if the labor progress is unsatisfactory, you can go for the cesarean. And the indications for cesarean include elderly primigravida, multipara with bad obstetrical history, diabetes with complications or difficult to control, obstetrical complications like preeclampsia, polyhydramnios, malpresentations, and fetal macrosomia. That is, if the weight of the baby is more than 4 kg. In these cases, without induction, directly you should go for the cesarean section. Otherwise also, even after 6 to 8 hours of induction also, if the labor is not getting progressed, if there is no progress is there for the labor, in that case also you should go for the cesarean. During the labor process, fetal monitoring also should be done. Continuous fetal monitoring should be there, and it is mandatory. You can go for the cardiotocography. For that you can attach the fetal scalp electrode and you can perform that. And fetal scalp blood should be taken for the pH sampling, and labor should not exceed more than 12 hours and should be augmented by lower rupture of the membrane and oxytocin. Otherwise, we should go for the cesarean. And examination of cord and placenta after the delivery. The placenta will be usually large, the cord will be thick, and there is increased incidence of single umbilical artery. So you should observe for these features, and features of placentosis is also should be observed. And if the labor is getting prolonged, there is a chance for getting acidosis. And in order to prevent the acidosis, or in case if it has occurred, in order to manage that, you can give IV insulin. The dose is 0.2 to 0.4 units per kilogram, and the loading dose is 2 to 10 units per hour. And the fluids isotonic sodium chloride is 4 to 6 liter in the first 12 hours, and 5% dextrose in normal saline when the blood glucose is 200 milligram per deciliter. And potassium, if reduced or normal, infusion should be given 15 to 20 milliequivalent per hour, and bicarbonate also should be given. During the puerperium, we are giving prophylactic antibiotics in order to prevent the infection, and in the puerperium, usually the blood glucose level will come back to the normal, so the insulin may not be needed, and fresh blood glucose after should be taken after 24 hours of delivery, and women who breastfeed should have additional 500 kilocalories in the diet. And in lactating woman, insulin doses, even if it is needed also, it will be lower, and contraceptives also should be recommended for the woman. And next we can see the care of the baby. A neonatologist should be there at the time of delivery, and the baby should be kept in the NICU in order to get the proper observation for the next 48 hours. And we have to expect, or we have to suspect asphyxia, and if it is occurring, it should be treated effectively. And we should look for the baby or screen the baby for the congenital malformations, and all the babies should have the blood glucose checking every 2 hours, within 2 hours after the birth, and all babies should receive 1 milligram of vitamin K IM, and early breastfeeding, and it should be repeated at 3 to 4 hours intervals. Nursing assessment: determine the immediate and previous 8-week diabetic control, evaluate ongoing client and fetal well-being, achieve and maintain normoglycemia, provide client coupled with appropriate information. And the nursing diagnosis include risk for imbalanced nutrition related to inability to ingest insufficient quality of nutrients, inability to utilize nutrients appropriately, lack of information about eating appropriately. Risk for fetal injury related to elevated maternal serum glucose levels. Risk for maternal injury related to tissue hypoxia, increased maternal serum glucose level, altered immune response. Deficient knowledge regarding diabetes control, treatment, prognosis, and self-care. So these are the main things about the gestational diabetes. Thank you for watching this video. See you soon with a new video.